It all commenced so innocuously, so ordinarily, just like any other day in my life. I had been joyfully wedded to Zennon, a man I deeply cherished who had 2 offspring from his prior marriage. Drago, who was 20, and Moreau, who was 18. I always recognized that being a stepmother would present its trials, but I also believed that with time, everything would stabilize. The bond between us was somewhat aloof, but that was natural. I was the new figure in their lives, and I comprehended the significance of granting them space and allowing them to acclimate to the changes in their family. Our connection was fundamentally dynamic. Zennon and I had been together for a spell, but it wasn't always straightforward to discover the right equilibrium. That afternoon, Zennon was absent on a business excursion, leaving me and his 2 sons at home. But I didn't suspect anything was amiss. Indeed, I encountered an unusual calmness while stationed in the kitchen preparing supper, with the only noises pervading the room being the clanking of cutlery as I chopped vegetables and the bubbling of the stew pot on the stove. The abode was peaceful and tranquil, imbuing me with an unusual sense of peace in the seclusion. The quietude was nearly overpowering, and I inhaled the warm, robust scent of the stew, anticipating a delightful repast for everyone upon their return. Unexpectedly, I discerned swift footfalls from above. Before I could pivot, Drago hurried through the kitchen entrance, his visage pallid and his eyes brimming with dread. "Mom, please ascend here promptly. Moreau is on the brink of demise," he articulated with anguish and sorrow. The enunciation of those phrases sent a shiver through me. I was unaware of the predicament. My heart pounded as the words echoed in my mind. What do you imply? What is the circumstance concerning Moreau? Did he endure an accident? Is he ailing? Inquiries flooded my thoughts. My respiration quickened, and I was devoid of the time to ponder. Without hesitation, I relinquished all my possessions. My blade, the chopping board, everything, and trailed Drago. We climbed swiftly, nearly in a daze, my limbs propelling me up the stairs, my pulse racing in my chest. Drago proceeded, his countenance grave with apprehension, his stride swift and resonant. I struggled to inhale as trepidation and bewilderment clouded my cognition. Upon reaching Moreau's chamber, I was uncertain of what to expect. However, nothing could have readied me for the spectacle that greeted me when the portal opened. There, in the room's center, stood Moreau. He was entirely unclothed, his lithe figure illuminated by the soft luminescence filtering through the window. He did not display a grin of joy or alleviation. His expression was devoid of anguish or fright. Instead, his smile possessed a perturbing, almost fiendish quality. I remained stationary, incapable of grasping what I was observing. It was a sight that rendered my heart frozen, caused my breath to waver, and paralyzed my form, incapable of comprehension. "Moreau, what is your present undertaking?" I faltered, my voice trembling in bewilderment. I endeavored to divert my gaze, yet the vision seemed indelibly imprinted in my recollection. A segment of me desired to shriek, to escape, to engage in any deed, yet my physique remained unresponsive. Before I could organize my thoughts, Moreau swiftly traversed the chamber, seized my hand, and drew me within. His demeanor was resolute and purposeful. "Moreau, desist." I endeavored to retreat, but it felt as if my corpus was immobilized, and his clutch was excessively potent. The entrance clicked shut. The portal closed behind me, prompting a frantic turn. Drago impeded the entryway, his stare conveying a blend of bewilderment and a more ominous sentiment that evoked discomfort in me. He appeared torn between an unfathomable dilemma and a far more distressing one. "Drago, the entrance. What is transpiring? What is the cause? Are you orchestrating this?" I strove to preserve my composure. Nonetheless, my voice quivered with apprehension. I yearned to clamor for explanations, yet I was overwhelmed by the oppressive burden of ambiguity. As I was poised to seize command of the scenario, an unanticipated weight abruptly descended onto my shoulders from the rear. Drago was proximate, his breath tepid across my ear. His palms clasped my shoulders gently, yet there resided a potency within them from which I could not elude. A tremor coursed down my spine as he murmured, "Stepmother, we cannot endure witnessing you with Zen nun." His intonation was hushed and raspy, akin to a disclosure. It was as though the cosmos had halted its revolution, abandoning me immobilized and incapable of deciphering the import of his declarations. "What is the theme of your dialogue?" "I fail to comprehend," I stammered, attempting to rotate and confront him, but his grasp tightened, immobilizing me. His gaze lingered on me, devoid of indecision or contrition, radiating an unusual air of resolve. At that juncture, Moreau advanced towards us leisurely, as if he were savoring each moment, prolonging it. The strain in the chamber intensified as he inclined, his visage mere inches from mine. His frosty, calculating gaze pierced me as if striving to discern my very essence. "Mother," Moreau whispered, his tone devoid of sentiment and devoid of emotion. "Kindly oblige us." The utterances impacted me with the force of a corporeal blow. I experienced constriction in my throat and tightness in my chest. This could not be transpiring. It could not be genuine. It cannot be. I wept internally, yet my physique remained immobilized. The youngsters I had once fostered, the youngsters I had endeavored to safeguard, were now antagonizing me. I attempted to liberate myself from their grasp, yet I lingered and scoffed. Moreau situated himself before me with Drago behind me, and two barriers confining my area. I discovered myself devoid of an escape route as dread surged through my anatomy, rendering me increasingly immobilized. "Permit me to depart," I attempted to bellow, but my voice wavered, frail and tremulous. It appeared as if my voice had deserted me, rendering me powerless. Moreau displayed a subtle sly smile that evoked a shudder along my vertebrae. "Mother, do not endeavor to oppose," he declared, his voice gentle yet imbued with indisputable authority. "We do not intend to injure you. We merely desire for you to apprehend your importance to us." The phrases lingered in the ambience, oppressive and suffocating. What happened? What caused this event? This was not what I had envisioned when I married Zennon. I never imagined that situations would intensify to this degree. Each moment stretched into an eternity. I struggled to maintain my sanity, but it was slipping away. I tried to resist and repel them, but my body no longer responded to my commands. My mind and body felt disconnected. Every touch and movement from them seemed to diminish a part of me. I felt my resistance fading, diminishing gradually. I was consumed by profound regret and humiliation. Donning a strange garment, I experienced an inner storm, an uncontrollable tornado. I had involuntary bodily reactions that instilled fear in me. I knew the situation was wrong. I recognized it crossed every line, but I couldn't stop it. I couldn't escape it. With each passing moment, I felt myself sinking deeper into this chaos, losing more of who I was. The principles I once held tightly were slipping through my fingers, and I was no longer the person I used to be. I was no longer in control. I had become a pawn in their game, a plaything for their desires. The subsequent days felt like a blur. Every morning I awoke beside Zennon, his peaceful face a stark contrast to the turmoil raging inside me. His warmth, his trust, everything I had cherished in our life together now felt like a cruel joke. I felt trapped in an endless cycle of guilt and fear, unable to break free. Each time I looked into his eyes, I saw only love and trust. I knew I had shattered that trust, and yet I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. The silence between us grew heavier with each passing day. I could no longer look him in the eye without feeling the weight of my deception. I carried my secret like a stone in my chest, heavy and suffocating. The smile that once came so easily now felt like a mask hiding the deep sense of shame and fear that had taken root inside me. In the evenings, when Zennon was at work or out with friends, I found myself alone with Moreau and Drago. The house that had once felt like a sanctuary now felt like a prison. Every time I saw them, I could feel their eyes on me, watching, waiting for the next moment to strike. Their presence was like a shadow hanging over me, making every room feel suffocating. They had taken control of my life in ways I couldn't even begin to understand, and with each passing day, their hold on me grew stronger. Initially, I tried to resist. I shouted, I pushed, I fought, but it was like trying to stop a tidal wave with a pebble. The more I fought, the more determined they became. It was as if my resistance only fueled their desire, making them bolder and more daring. The moments I once hoped would pass never did. Instead, they turned into habits, and I, who had once prided myself on my strength, had become weak emotionally, mentally, and physically. My mind screamed at me to stop, to get out, to run, but my body no longer obeyed. The struggle became less about what was happening and more about my own internal conflict. I felt like a prisoner in my own body, as though everything I had once believed in had been stripped away piece by piece. My own thoughts had become my enemy. Every time I tried to make sense of what was happening, the truth seemed further out of reach, buried beneath layers of guilt and shame. At times, I would gaze into the mirror, yearning to find the person I once aspired to be, only to find a stranger, someone shattered and lost, someone who had let everything fade away. My reflection stared back at me with empty eyes, hollow and distant, as though I had ceased to exist long ago. I no longer recognized myself, and I didn't know who to turn to. There was no one who could understand the darkness I had fallen into. How could I explain to anyone what was happening? How could I tell Zennon, the man I loved, that his sons had broken me in ways I could never heal? How could I tell him that I had become their victim, their puppet, controlled by their every whim? I couldn't even tell myself what was happening, let alone anyone else. The shame was suffocating, and every time I thought about confessing, a voice inside me told me that it would be the end of everything. Zennon would never forgive me. Zennon would destroy the life we had built together. Only the ruins of my own mistakes would remain. The burden of that potential immobilized me, rendering any action unfeasible. Yet there were moments when the guilt became unbearable. In solitude, I would weep, my tears saturating the pillow as I held it firmly against my chest. I yearned to scream and express the anguish and fury that had accumulated within me, yet I remained unable to shatter the oppressive silence surrounding me. The walls of my own psyche constricted further with each passing day, leaving me ensnared in my own silence and guilt. I began to contemplate how long I could maintain the facade of normality. How many more days could I feign contentment beside Zennon while my spirit deteriorated within? Each night I lay awake next to him, fixated on the ceiling, awaiting the embrace of sleep, only to be tormented by nightmares. Visions of the events I had permitted to transpire haunted me, with Moreau and Drago relentlessly pursuing me in my dreams, their gazes fixed upon me, their voices reverberating in my consciousness. I found no escape regardless of my efforts. They resided within me, and there was no means of expulsion. I made an effort. I sought solace in my work and minor distractions, attempting to divert my attention from the horror I was enduring, but nothing proved effective. Nothing could obscure the reality that I was living a deception. My life, my marriage, everything I had held to be true was based on falsehood. I allowed it to occur. I had given in to exploitation, and now there was no escape. I attempted to rationalize my thoughts. I convinced myself that I had no alternative and was powerless, yet I recognized the reality. I had permitted it to occur. I had displayed weakness, and now I must confront the repercussions of my own decisions. How could I confront Zennon? In what manner could I accomplish this? Disclose to him the inconceivable? How could I reveal that I had deceived him in the most unfavorable manner? I grappled with the notion of revealing my truth to him. An internal voice incessantly cautioned me that it was too late. Disclosing my secret would culminate in irreversible consequences. No forgiveness, no redemption, only anguish and devastation. The prospect of losing him, of forfeiting everything, was unbearable, compelling me to maintain my silence. However, I recognized that I could not harbor this secret indefinitely. Its burden was suffocating. I understood that I had to make a choice and confront the truth regardless of its difficulty. Yet I was uncertain whether I was confronting the reality of my actions or the essence of my transformation. What I did comprehend was that this silence was not a solution. It would ultimately annihilate me and everything I held dear if I failed to articulate my thoughts and reclaim control over my life. I would face dire repercussions consequently. I would remain eternally lost. I seek your assistance with guidance. Should I disclose all information to Zennon? Should I confess and confront the repercussions? Or should I remain silent and attempt to continue living bearing this load? I hope that time will provide healing. If you have read this far, please refrain from judgment. I seek just relief and tranquility. I can no longer bear this weight alone. I seek reassurance that I am not the sole individual who has experienced such profound feelings of disorientation, despair, and entrapment. From my narrative, I have realized that silence merely exacerbates sorrow. It engenders additional secrets, falsehoods, and agony. I see now that I ought to have expressed my concerns earlier. I ought to have confronted the truth from the first regardless of its difficulty. Yet it is never too late to rectify matters. I must summon the fortitude to proceed, and I shall, irrespective of the outcome or repercussions. I shall discover a method to liberate myself from this darkness. I will restore my life, dignity, and tranquility. Thank you for your attention. Kindly disseminate your reflections and expressions. May assist me in discovering an exit from this narrative of confessions that culminates here. Should you deem this tale thought-provoking, if you find this content engaging, kindly support us by liking, subscribing, and sharing your views and opinions. They are of paramount importance to us. Kindly feel free to submit your comments below. Your contributions empower us to persist in delivering additional narratives, facts, and authentic experiences. Thank you and farewell. We will see you in the subsequent video.